A child's scream echoed across the barren wasteland as Imperial guards dragged her parents away, leaving her alone in the dust. No one dared defy the Emperor's decree. Humans were to be exiled or executed. None could have predicted that this abandoned girl would one day bring two worlds together, becoming the bridge between mankind and the ancient dragons that ruled the skies of Terra Nova. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. I always love chatting with you, and it really helps support the channel. Also, leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. The wasteland stretched endlessly under the scorching twin suns of Terra Nova, a planet once lush and vibrant before the Great Drought. 8-year-old Lyra huddled against a rock formation, her dirty blonde hair matted with sweat and tears, her once clean colony uniform now torn and stained. The sound of the Imperial transport ships had long faded, taking with them the last human colonists, including her parents, who had been forcibly evacuated when Emperor Draken declared humans unwelcome on his world. "Mom, Dad." Lyra's voice was hoarse from hours of screaming. The Imperial guards had separated her from her parents during the chaotic roundup, and in the confusion, she'd been left behind, forgotten or perhaps deliberately abandoned as an example of human weakness. Night fell quickly on Terra Nova, bringing with it a bone-chilling cold that contrasted sharply with the day's heat. Lyra's teeth chattered as she curled into herself, stomach growling. She hadn't eaten since morning, and the water in her small canteen was nearly gone. A distant roar made her freeze. The indigenous people of Terra Nova, the Scalers, often spoke of predators that hunted in the wasteland at night, creatures that had adapted to the harsh environment after the planet's climate collapsed. Lyra had never seen one, having lived her entire life in the protected human colony, but she'd heard stories. Another roar, closer this time. Lyra scrambled to her feet, heart pounding. She looked around desperately for somewhere to hide, but the barren landscape offered little shelter. The rock formation she'd been leaning against had a small crevice, perhaps just large enough for her small frame. She squeezed herself into it, scraping her elbows and knees in the process. The ground trembled beneath her, and a shadow passed overhead, momentarily blocking out the light from Terra Nova's 3 moons. Lyra held her breath, pressing herself deeper into the crevice. A massive creature landed with surprising grace about 20 meters from her hiding spot. In the moonlight, Lyra could make out an enormous reptilian body, powerful hind legs, and a long, spiked tail. But most impressive were the wings, massive, leathery appendages that spanned at least 15 meters from tip to tip. A dragon. Not the small, domesticated kind that some wealthy scalers kept as pets, but one of the wild, ancient beasts that most believed were just legends. The dragon's scales gleamed like burnished copper in the moonlight. It lowered its head to the ground, nostrils flaring as it scented the air. Then, to Lyra's horror, it turned directly toward her hiding place. "I know you're there, little one," a deep voice rumbled, seeming to resonate within Lyra's mind rather than through her ears. "Come out. I mean you no harm." Lyra remained frozen, too terrified to move. "The night predators will find you soon if you stay," the voice continued. "There is safety with me." A sob escaped Lyra's lips. Are you going to eat me?" A sound like rolling thunder emanated from the dragon. Laughter, Lyra realized with surprise. "I have not eaten a sentient being in over 3 centuries, the dragon replied, "and I do not intend to start with a child." Slowly, hesitantly, Lyra emerged from the crevice. Standing before the dragon, she felt impossibly small. Its head alone was larger than her entire body. The dragon lowered its massive head until one golden eye, with a vertical pupil like a cat's, was level with Lyra's face. "You are human," it observed. "The last of your kind on Terra Nova, I believe." Lyra nodded, tears welling in her eyes again. "They took my parents away. The Emperor's guards." "Ah, Emperor Draken," the dragon said, and Lyra thought she detected disdain in its mental voice. "Always making decisions in haste that he later regrets at leisure." "You know the Emperor?" Lyra asked, momentarily forgetting her fear. "I knew him when he was Prince Draken, and before that, when he was just a hatchling," the dragon replied. "He has forgotten much in his quest for power." The great beast settled onto the ground, folding its wings. "What is your name, child?" "Lyra," she whispered. "Lyra." the dragon repeated, the name seeming to take on a musical quality in its mental voice. I am Kalorn. A distant howl cut through the night, followed by several more. Desert wolves, Kalorn said, rising to his feet. They hunt in packs and would find you quite appealing. He lowered his body. Climb onto my back, little Lyra. I will take you to safety. Lyra hesitated for only a moment before the howls grew closer. She scrambled onto Kalorn's back, finding handholds between the large scales along his spine. Hold tight, Kalorn instructed. With a powerful thrust of his hind legs, he launched into the air, wings unfurling with a sound like sails catching wind. Lyra gasped as the ground fell away beneath them. The wasteland spread out below, bathed in moonlight, starkly beautiful in its desolation. Despite her exhaustion and fear, a small thrill ran through her. She was flying on a dragon, something no human had ever done before, as far as she knew. They flew for what seemed like hours. Lyra, lulled by the rhythmic beating of Kalorn's wings, eventually dozed off, her small body pressed against the warm scales of the dragon's neck. She awoke to Kalorn's voice in her mind. We are here, little one. Lyra blinked awake, looking around in wonder. They had arrived at a massive canyon, its walls glowing faintly amber in the pre-dawn light. Kalorn descended into the canyon, which widened into a sheltered valley. To Lyra's astonishment, the valley floor was green, actual vegetation, a sight she hadn't seen outside the colony's hydroponic gardens. How is this possible? She asked as Kalorn landed beside a clear pool fed by a small waterfall emerging from the canyon wall. The ancient places still remember what Terra Nova once was, Kalorn replied enigmatically. Drink, child. The water is pure. Lyra slid from Kalorn's back and approached the pool cautiously. Her reflection startled her, face streaked with dirt, hair tangled, eyes wide and fearful. She cupped her hands and drank, the water tasting sweeter than anything she'd experienced before. Are there other dragons here? She asked, looking around the secluded valley. Not anymore, Kalorn said, a note of sadness in his mental voice. I'm the last of my kind in this region. The others have gone to the far mountains, away from the scalers and their endless wars. Why didn't you go with them? This is my ancestral territory, Kalorn replied simply, and I am too old and stubborn to abandon it. How old are you? Lyra asked, curiosity temporarily overriding her fear and grief. By your counting, over 700 years, Kalorn said. A respectable age, even for a dragon. Lyra's eyes widened. That's really old. Kalorn made that rumbling laugh again. Indeed it is, little one. Now come, you must be hungry. He led her to a rocky overhang where a cave opened in the canyon wall. Inside, Lyra was surprised to find a comfortable space, with a floor covered in soft sand. In one corner lay a pile of furs and fabrics, a nest of sorts. You may rest here, Kalorn said. I will find food. Before Lyra could respond, the dragon had launched himself back into the air. Left alone, she explored the cave cautiously. Along one wall were objects that seemed oddly out of place. Books, metallic artifacts, even a few toys that appeared to be of scalar design. Collected treasures, she realized, remembering stories that dragons hoarded precious things. Kalorn returned with a small desert antelope clutched in his talons. With surprising delicacy for such a massive creature, he prepared a portion for Lyra, using a claw to slice the meat into manageable pieces. I apologize for the lack of cooking fire, he said. I usually consume my meals raw. It's okay, Lyra said, though she eyed the raw meat dubiously. Her colony had synthetic protein most days, with real meat a rare luxury. She'd never had to eat it uncooked. Seeing her hesitation, Kalorn exhaled a gentle stream of heat from his nostrils, partially searing the meat. This may be more palatable, he offered. The meat was tough but flavorful, and Lyra, ravenous after her ordeal, ate until she was full. Afterward, exhaustion overtook her, and she curled up on the fur nest, falling almost instantly into a deep sleep. She dreamed of her parents, her mother's gentle hands braiding her hair, her father's deep laugh as he swung her onto his shoulders. In the dream, they were looking for her, calling her name. Lyra tried to answer, but no sound came from her throat. She woke with tears on her cheeks to find Kalorn watching her, his golden eyes gleaming in the dim light of the cave. You cry for your family, he observed. It is a wound that time may ease but never fully heal. Lyra wiped her eyes. Will I ever see them again? That, said Kalorn, I cannot say. But I promise you this, little Lyra. You will not face the future alone. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Under Kalorn's protection, Lyra learned to survive in the harsh environment of Terra Nova. The dragon taught her which desert plants were edible, how to find water where none seemed to exist, and how to read the weather patterns that could bring sudden, violent storms. Most importantly, Kalorn taught her about Terra Nova's history, the truth that had been hidden from the human colonists. The planet had once been a paradise, with vast oceans and forests teeming with life. The Scalers, originally a nomadic people who lived in harmony with the dragons, had developed technology and formed city-states. Wars over resources had led to climate manipulation attempts that backfired catastrophically, resulting in the Great Drought 3 centuries ago. The humans arrived a century after the drought began. Kalorn explained as they sat at the entrance to the cave, watching the sunset paint the canyon walls crimson. They came with promises of technology that could restore Terra Nova. Some Scalers welcomed them, others feared them. The truth, as it often does, lay somewhere between. My parents were scientists, Lyra said quietly. They were working on drought-resistant crops. Noble work, Kalorn acknowledged. But Emperor Draken sees threats everywhere since the assassination attempt 3 years ago. When the Oracle prophesied that humans would bring great change to Terra Nova, he chose to interpret it as a warning rather than a promise. As the months passed, Lyra grew stronger and more confident. She learned to climb the canyon walls, finding hidden paths that led to overlooking plateaus. Kalorn allowed her these explorations, but always kept watch from above. At night, he taught her about the stars, telling stories of times when dragons had flown beyond Terra Nova's atmosphere, touching the void between worlds. Lyra's 10th birthday arrived according to her careful tracking of days. To her surprise, Kalorn presented her with a gift, a small crystal pendant on a chain of intricately woven copper wire. This is Dragon Stone, he explained as she admired how the crystal seemed to hold fire within it. Formed from the tears of the first dragons when they witnessed the beauty of Terra Nova. It is said to protect its bearer from harm. It's beautiful, Lyra whispered, slipping the chain over her head. There is more, Kalorn said. Touch it with your mind as well as your fingers. Lyra frowned, not understanding, but closed her eyes and concentrated on the warm crystal resting against her skin. To her astonishment, she felt something, a presence, familiar yet different from Kalorn's mental voice. What is it? She gasped, opening her eyes. The stone contains a fragment of my consciousness, Kalorn explained. A dragon gift, rarely bestowed. It will allow us to communicate when we are apart. Why would we be apart? Lyra asked, suddenly anxious. Kalorn's great head lowered until his eye was level with hers. Because, little one, it is time for the next phase of your education. Tomorrow, we fly to the edge of the Wasteland, where the Scalar outposts begin. You must learn about the people of this world if you are ever to find your place in it. But what if they hurt me? Lyra's hand clutched the pendant. The Emperor ordered all humans to leave. You are under my protection, Kalorn said, a rumble of fierce determination in his mental voice. And contrary to what you may believe, not all Scalars share their Emperor's fear of humans. There are those who remember the old alliances, who still value wisdom over suspicion. That night, Lyra found sleep elusive. The prospect of facing Scalars, the same people whose guards had torn her from her parents, filled her with dread. Yet there was excitement too, a yearning to see more of this world that had become her home in a way the sterile human colony never had. In the morning, Kalorn helped her prepare, fashioning a riding harness from supple leather so she could sit more securely on his back during the long flight. He also presented her with clothing made from the soft underscales he occasionally shed, dyed with plant pigments to match the desert landscape. These will protect you from the sun and help you blend with your surroundings if necessary, he explained. As the sun rose, they took to the air. Lyra had grown accustomed to flying with Kalorn, but she never tired of the exhilaration of soaring above the wasteland. From this height, she could see patterns in the seemingly random landscape, ancient riverbeds, the ruins of long-abandoned settlements, and occasionally, the straight lines of roads that had once connected Scalar cities. They flew for hours, stopping once at midday to rest and drink from a hidden spring Kalorn knew of. By late afternoon, Lyra could see changes in the terrain below, patches of irrigated land appearing like green islands in the sea of sand and rock. The southern territories, Kalorn explained, nominally under imperial control, but the governor here, Sarek, maintains a degree of independence. He is an old acquaintance of mine. Lyra noticed Kalorn's hesitation. Is he your friend? Dragons do not have friends in the way humans understand the concept, Kalorn replied. But Sarek and I have an arrangement that has served us both well over the decades. He leaves my territory unmolested, and in return, I occasionally provide him with information about movements in the Wasteland. As they approached a range of low hills, Kalorn began to descend, landing on a flat-topped mesa away from any visible settlements. We will wait until nightfall, he said. I have sent a message to Sarek through the dragonstone he keeps. If he is amenable, he will meet us here. He has a dragonstone too? Lyra asked, surprised. A smaller one, with more limited connection, Kalorn said. It was a gift for a service he performed long ago, when he was but a young warrior. As the sun set, Lyra felt a growing nervousness. She had not seen another sentient being besides Kalorn in nearly 2 years. What would the Scalar governor think of her? Would he report her presence to Emperor Draken? Be calm, little one. Kalorn's voice sounded in her mind. Remember what I have taught you. Show no fear, speak truthfully but cautiously, and above all, trust your instincts. Darkness had fully fallen when Lyra spotted lights approaching. A small group on hovering transports, their engines nearly silent. Kalorn rose to his full height, his copper scales gleaming in the moonlight, an imposing figure designed to remind the visitors of his power. The transports stopped a respectful distance away, and a single figure dismounted, approaching on foot. Tall and lean like all scalers, he wore the elaborate scale armor of high rank, but his head was uncovered, revealing facial scales and patterns of deep green and gold. Unlike the Imperial Guards Lyra remembered, his face seemed capable of greater expression, the scales around his eyes and mouth more flexible. He stopped several meters away and performed a fluid bow, one clawed hand over his chest. Kalorn, Ancient One, he said in a voice that was surprisingly melodic. It has been many seasons since you graced my territory with your presence. Governor Sarek, Kalorn acknowledged with a slight inclination of his massive head. I see prosperity has found you. Prosperity is a generous description, Sarek replied with a dry chuckle. But we survive, which is more than many can claim in these times. His gaze shifted to Lyra, who stood partially concealed behind one of Kalorn's forelegs. And who is this? Surely not a young dragon. The rumors of hatchlings would have reached me. This is Lyra, Kalorn said, using his wing to gently usher her forward. A human child, abandoned during the Emperor's purge. She has been under my protection these past 2 years. Sarek's vertical pupils widened in surprise, the equivalent of a human's raised eyebrows. A human child? Here. He approached cautiously, crouching to bring himself closer to Lyra's height. I had heard all humans were gone from Terra Nova. Not all, Lyra said, finding her voice. They forgot me. Sarek studied her with evident curiosity. Or perhaps, he said softly, you were not forgotten, but left for a purpose. What purpose would that be? Kalorn asked, his mental voice resonating with an edge of challenge. Sarek rose, facing the dragon directly. The oracle's prophecy, Ancient One. From the forgotten seed will grow the bridge between worlds. Some interpreted this as a warning about humans. Others saw it differently. And how did you see it, Governor? Kalorn pressed. I have learned to reserve judgment until events unfold, Sarek replied diplomatically. But I find it significant that you, who have avoided involvement in scalar affairs for centuries, have taken this human child under your wing. He turned his attention back to Lyra. You are either extraordinarily fortunate or extraordinarily important, young one. Perhaps both. Lyra felt a strange mix of emotions at his words. Pride that Kalorn had chosen her, fear of the expectations that choice might create, and underneath it all, a longing for her parents that never fully subsided. I have brought her to learn, Kalorn said. The Wasteland has taught her survival, but she must understand the complexities of Terra Nova if she is to find her place here. You wish me to teach her? Sarek asked, surprise evident in his voice. To arrange for her education, Kalorn clarified. I will return for her regularly, but she should dwell among scalars for periods of time. Lyra looked up at Kalorn in alarm. This was more than she had expected. Actual separation, not just visits. The dragon's wing curled around her reassuringly. It will not be immediate, he told her mentally. And never against your will. But consider the possibility, little one. Sarek seemed to be considering the request carefully. It would need to be handled with great discretion, he said finally. If word reached the Imperial City that I was harboring a human. I understand the risk I ask you to take, Kalorn acknowledged. But consider the potential reward. If the Oracle's prophecy refers to this child, would you not wish to be remembered as the one who helped shape her path? A calculating look crossed Sarek's face, quickly replaced by a more neutral expression. There is wisdom in your words, Ancient One. I will need time to make arrangements, to find tutors who can be trusted. Time we have, Kalorn replied. For tonight, I wished only to make introductions. We will return in 1 month's time to hear your proposal. Sarek bowed again. I will be prepared. He turned to Lyra and, to her surprise, extended his hand, a gesture he must have learned from humans, as it was not a traditional scalar greeting. Until we meet again, Lyra. You carry a heavier burden than you know, but also, perhaps, greater hope than any of us deserve. Lyra took his hand hesitantly, finding his scales smoother than she expected, warm like sun-heated stone. Thank you for not being afraid of me, she said simply. Something like a smile formed on Sarek's face. Child, in my long life, I have learned that those we fear often turn out to be those we simply do not understand. He released her hand and stepped back. An understanding is something Terra Nova has been lacking for far too long. After Sarek and his escort departed, Lyra and Kalorn remained on the mesa until dawn. The dragon was unusually quiet, his thoughts hidden from her. Are you going to leave me with them? Lyra finally asked as the first rays of sunlight touched the horizon. Never leave you, Kalorn corrected, but allow you to grow in ways I alone cannot nurture. He turned his golden gaze upon her. You are human, Lyra. As much as you have adapted to life with a dragon, there are aspects of your nature that need the company of other beings who walk on 2 legs, who build and create with hands rather than magic. I don't want to be with other people, Lyra protested. I want to stay with you. And you shall, for much of the time, Kalorn assured her. But consider this. If you learn the ways of the scalars, understand their language and customs fully, might you not be better equipped to someday search for your parents? Lyra hadn't considered this possibility. The thought that education among the scalars might someday help her find her family gave her pause. Would you help me look for them? She asked quietly. When the time is right, Kalorn promised. But first, you must grow stronger, wiser, and more knowledgeable about this world. The human colonies were sent far from Terra Nova. Finding them will not be a simple task. As they flew back to their canyon home, Lyra's mind was filled with new possibilities. For the first time since being abandoned in the Wasteland, she allowed herself to imagine a future beyond day-to-day survival. A future that might someday include a reunion with her parents, but would certainly include both her dragon protector and a new understanding of the world that had become her home. 6 years passed. Lyra, now 16, stood at the edge of Governor Sarek's compound, watching the horizon. Her slender frame had grown tall and strong, her once matted blonde hair now woven into intricate braids in the scalar style, adorned with copper beads that matched the dragonstone pendant she never removed. The loose desert clothing she wore was a blend of human and scalar design, practical yet distinctly her own. He's coming, she said to Naylan, her scalar friend and combat instructor, pointing to a distant speck in the sky. Naylan, a young female scalar with scales and patterns of silver and blue, shaded her eyes. I don't see anything, she admitted, but I've learned to trust your senses where Kalorn is concerned. Lyra smiled, touching the dragonstone at her throat. The connection between her and Kalorn had strengthened over the years, allowing her to sense his presence from great distances. It was one of many abilities she had developed that puzzled and sometimes alarmed her scalar teachers. The education that had begun with cautious visits to Sarek's compound had evolved into extended stays, with Lyra dividing her time between human studies, preserved from colony records, scalar history and language, and periodic returns to the canyon where Kalorn continued to teach her the old ways of Terra Nova. Lyra, a young voice called out. Kes, Governor Sarek's 10-year-old son, came running across the compound, his green gold scales gleaming in the sunlight. Is Kalorn really coming today? Will he tell us stories about the ancient times? If you ask him nicely, Lyra replied, ruffling the crest of scales on the boy's head affectionately. Kes was part of the first generation of scalers to grow up knowing a human, and his natural curiosity had made him one of Lyra's most enthusiastic supporters. The distant speck grew larger, resolving into the unmistakable silhouette of a dragon in flight. Kalorn's copper scales caught the sunlight, sending flashes across the compound that drew attention from everyone present. Though his visits were now expected and welcomed, the sight of the ancient dragon still inspired awe among the scalers. Kalorn landed with practiced grace in the open area designated for him, folding his massive wings as Lyra approached. She placed a hand on his foreleg, their customary greeting that allowed their minds to touch directly. You've grown again, Kalorn observed, his mental voice warm with affection. And you've added another scar, Lyra replied, noting a fresh mark across his left shoulder. Desert worms. An overly ambitious Imperial patrol, Kalorn corrected. They've been pushing further into the Wasteland recently. Something has the Emperor agitated. Governor Sarek approached, performing the formal bow of respect before addressing the dragon. Ancient One, you honor us with your presence. I trust your journey was uneventful, aside from the patrol. The skies of Terra Nova remain mine to travel freely, Kalorn replied with a hint of pride. Though I would speak with you privately about what I've observed in the outer territories. Sarek nodded, understanding the implied seriousness. Of course, after the evening meal, perhaps? His gaze shifted to Lyra. Unless our bridge builder should be part of the discussion? Lyra had grown used to being called by the prophecy's title, though it still made her uncomfortable. Despite 6 years of education and training, she felt no closer to understanding what role she was supposed to play in Terra Nova's future. Lyra should hear what I have to say, Kalorn confirmed. But first, I believe I promised young Kes stories of the time before the drought. The evening passed pleasantly, with Kalorn entertaining the compound's children with tales of ancient Terra Nova. Lyra watched, as always struck by the contrast between the dragon's fearsome appearance and his gentle patience with the young scalers. It reminded her of how he had been with her when she was small and frightened. Later, in Sarek's private council chamber, the mood turned serious. Maps were spread across a large table, showing Terra Nova's known territories. Kalorn used a claw to indicate regions far to the north. Imperial forces have established new outposts here, and here, he said. They're searching for something or someone. The Emperor has grown increasingly paranoid in recent years, Sarek said, his expression troubled. There are rumors of purges even among his most loyal advisors. What would they be looking for in the Wasteland? Lyra asked, studying the map. That is what concerns me, Kalorn replied. The patrols are focusing on areas where old human technology was abandoned during the evacuation. Lyra felt a chill. You think they're looking for human survivors? Or human weapons, Sarek suggested grimly. Despite the official rhetoric about human weakness, Emperor Draken always respected your people's technology. There's more, Kalorn said. The Imperial Astronomers Guild has detected unusual activity in the outer system. Ships of unknown design have been observed at the edge of Terra Nova's solar system. Sarek's scales flattened against his skin, a sign of alarm. Return ships? The human colonies coming back? Possibly, Kalorn acknowledged. Or something else entirely. Either way, change is coming to Terra Nova, and the Emperor knows it. Lyra's mind raced with possibilities. Could it really be human ships returning? Might her parents be among them? The thought both excited and terrified her. After all these years, she was as much a child of Terra Nova as of Earth, with loyalties to both dragons and scalers. If humans return in force, the Emperor will see it as an invasion, Sarek said, voicing what they all knew. He will mobilize the Imperial fleet, which would be disastrous for all sides, Kalorn agreed. Unless someone could stand between them. Someone who understands both humans and Terra Nova. Both Kalorn and Sarek turned to look at Lyra. The weight of their expectation fell on her shoulders like a physical burden. I'm just one person, she protested. The Emperor would never listen to me. Not as you are now. Perhaps, Kalorn conceded. But if you were to return with something of value, something the Emperor desperately wants. The old human weather control technology, Sarek said, his eyes widening in understanding. The systems abandoned in the northern wastes when the evacuation was ordered. Precisely, Kalorn confirmed. Technology that could potentially begin to reverse the drought. If Lyra could recover it and demonstrate its operation, the Emperor would have to acknowledge her value, Sarek finished. It might give her the standing to serve as an intermediary if the human ships are indeed returning. Lyra looked between them, stunned by the magnitude of what they were suggesting. You want me to go into the deep wasteland, find abandoned technology that may not even be functional after 8 years of exposure, somehow get it working again, and then waltz into the Imperial City, where all humans are banned on pain of death, to offer it to the Emperor? When you phrase it that way, it does sound rather ambitious, Sarek admitted with a dry chuckle. It would be dangerous, Kalorn acknowledged. But you would not go alone. I would guide you to the northern territories, and Governor Sarek could provide an escort of his most trusted guards for the journey to the Imperial City. Why now? Lyra asked. We've known about the abandoned technology for years. Because time is running short, Kalorn replied solemnly. Whatever, or whoever, is approaching Terra Nova will arrive within months, not years. If you are to position yourself as a mediator, it must be before first contact occurs. Lyra took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing thoughts. Part of her, the part that still dreamed of reuniting with her parents, leapt at the possibility that human ships were returning. Another part feared what such a return might mean for her adopted world and the friends she'd made here. I need time to think, she said finally. Take the night, Sarek advised. But remember, opportunities like this are as rare as dragon hatchlings. Hesitate too long, and the moment passes. Lyra spent a restless night on the roof of her quarters, watching Terra Nova's 3 moons traverse the sky. The dragonstone at her throat pulsed warmly against her skin, a reminder of Kalorn's constant presence in her life. Through it, she sensed the dragon's consciousness, awake as well, patient but expectant. By morning, her decision was made. She found Kalorn and Sarek already waiting in the governor's council chamber. I'll do it, she said without preamble. But I want to assemble my own team for the Wasteland journey. People I trust. Sarek nodded approvingly. A wise precaution. Whom did you have in mind? Nayland for combat and security. Tezek for his knowledge of old technology. And Kree for navigation and survival skills. All 3 were young scalers who had grown up alongside Lyra in the compound. Peers who treated her as an equal rather than a curiosity or a prophecy. A solid selection, Sarek agreed. Though Kree's mother may object to her daughter venturing into the deep wasteland. I'll speak with her, Lyra promised. And I want to leave as soon as possible, within 3 days. So quickly, Sarek asked, surprised. If Imperial patrols are already searching the northern territories, we need to move before they find what we're looking for, Lyra explained. Besides, the longer we delay, the more time I'll have to reconsider this insane plan. Kalorn made his rumbling laugh, familiar and reassuring. You have grown wise as well as tall, little one. The next 3 days passed in a flurry of preparation. Maps were studied, supplies gathered, and equipment checked and rechecked. Nayland, Tezek, and Kree all agreed to join the expedition without hesitation, though Kree's mother indeed required considerable persuasion. On the morning of departure, Governor Sarek presented Lyra with a final gift, a communication device modified to work with her dragonstone. It has limited range, he explained, but it should allow you to contact us if you become separated from Kalorn. Lyra secured the device to her belt, alongside the stunner and knife she had trained with for years. Dressed in the durable wasteland gear that blended scalar and human design, she looked like a warrior from some forgotten age, neither fully human nor scalar, but something new. The journey north began with Lyra riding Kalorn, as she had so many times before, while her 3 scalar companions followed in a rugged terrain vehicle. They traveled by night and sheltered by day, avoiding the worst of the twin suns' heat and reducing the chance of detection by Imperial patrols. On the 5th night, they reached the edge of the deep wasteland, a region so hostile that even the hardy creatures of Terra Nova avoided it. Here, the devastation of the Great Drought was at its most extreme. The ground was cracked and lifeless, and strange formations of crystallized minerals jutted from the earth like alien growths. The human weather station should be approximately 50 kilometers ahead, Kalorn said as they made camp in the shelter of a rock outcropping. But I can fly no further with you, Lyra. The Imperial anti-aircraft defenses begin just beyond this point. They've militarized the deep wasteland? Nayland asked, surprised. What could they possibly be protecting out here? That, said Tezik, the technology specialist, is what makes me think we're on the right track. The Emperor wouldn't waste resources guarding nothing. They set out at dawn in the terrain vehicle, with Kalorn reluctantly remaining behind. The dragonstone at Lyra's throat provided a constant connection to him, but she still felt vulnerable without his physical presence for the first time in years. The landscape grew increasingly bizarre as they ventured deeper into the wasteland. Kree, navigating through terrain few scalers had ever traversed, kept them on course despite the lack of landmarks. There, Tezik said suddenly, pointing ahead. That distortion in the air, it's a camouflage field. Lyra squinted, barely able to make out the wavering disturbance he indicated. As they approached cautiously, the distortion resolved into the outline of a massive structure, far larger than the weather station they had expected to find. That's not colony technology, Lyra said, frowning. At least, not like anything I remember. They stopped the vehicle a safe distance away, observing through electrobinoculars. The structure appeared to be a complex of interconnected domes and towers, partially buried in the wasteland soil. Despite years of exposure to the harsh environment, it seemed intact and possibly operational. There's no Imperial presence, Nayland noted, scanning the perimeter. No guards, no vehicles, nothing. That doesn't make sense, Kreese said. Why establish anti-aircraft defenses and then leave the ground approach unguarded? Unless they want someone to find it, Lyra realized with sudden clarity. It's a trap. No sooner had she spoken than the ground beneath their vehicle erupted. Sand and rock exploded upward as massive, segmented forms burst from beneath the surface. Desert worms, each the size of their vehicle, with circular maws lined with razor-sharp teeth. Drive, Nayland shouted. Kree slammed the vehicle into motion, narrowly avoiding the first worm's lunge. More worms surfaced ahead of them, blocking the route to the structure. Others appeared behind, cutting off retreat. They've been engineered, Tezik observed with horrified fascination as they swerved between the creatures. Natural desert worms aren't this coordinated. Lyra clutched her dragonstone, reaching out to Kalorn with her mind. The dragon was already airborne, sensing her danger through their connection, but she knew he couldn't reach them before the worms overwhelmed their vehicle. The structure, she decided. It's our only chance. Those doors look like they might be human-made. I might be able to access them. Kree nodded grimly and accelerated directly toward the nearest entrance, a reinforced doorway set into the base of one of the domes. The worms pursued, gaining ground with each passing second. As they skidded to a halt before the entrance, Lyra leapt from the vehicle and pressed her hand against the access panel. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then, to her astonishment, green lights flickered across the panel's surface. Genetic recognition protocol accepted, announced a synthesized voice. Welcome, Dr. Crane. Dr. Crane? Lyra whispered. That was my mother's title. The door slid open with a hiss of preserved atmosphere. Lyra and her companions rushed inside as the worms closed in. The doors sealed automatically behind them, leaving the creatures to throw themselves against the reinforced barrier in futile rage. Inside, emergency lighting activated, revealing a vast atrium. The air was stale but breathable. Signs in both human standard and scalar script adorned the walls, directing visitors to different sections of the facility. This isn't a weather station, Tezik said, examining a directory. It's a research center. Look, biological engineering, climate restoration, xenobiology. Why would the system recognize you as your mother? Nayland asked Lyra. I don't know, Lyra admitted. But I intend to find out. They proceeded cautiously through the facility, which appeared to have been evacuated in haste. Personal items remained at workstations, and data screens still displayed information powered by some autonomous energy source. In what appeared to be the main laboratory, Lyra found her answer. A wall of images showed the research team, and there, prominently displayed, were her parents. Not as she remembered them, but in formal scientific attire, standing proudly before the facility. They weren't just colonists, Lyra realized, her voice tight with emotion. They were leading the research here. Tezik had found a computer terminal and was scrolling through files. This place was a joint project between humans and scalers, he said with growing excitement. A secret initiative outside Imperial control, working to reverse the Great Drought using combined technologies. Then why was it abandoned? Kree asked. It wasn't, not willingly, Nayland said, examining another terminal. According to these security logs, Imperial forces raided the facility. The researchers activated emergency protocols and evacuated, but they planned to return once the political situation stabilized. Which never happened because the Emperor ordered all humans expelled, Lyra finished. She touched the image of her parents, tears welling in her eyes. They didn't abandon their work by choice. They were forced to leave. A sudden realization struck her. The system recognized me as my mother. That means your genetic code is similar enough to hers that the facility's security system can't tell the difference, Tezik confirmed. Which means you should have full access to everything here. Lyra took a deep breath, steeling herself. Then let's find out what was so important about this place that my parents were willing to risk Imperial wrath to build it. In the central command room, Lyra placed her hand on the main control console. Screens flickered to life around them, displaying complex data streams and system diagnostics. System access granted, announced the same synthesized voice. Welcome back, Dr. Crane. Resuming Project Genesis from standby mode. Project Genesis? Lyra whispered. The largest screen displayed a simulation of Terra Nova, not as it was now, but as it once had been, with vast oceans and green continents. Then the simulation shifted, showing the progression of the Great Drought. Finally, it displayed a third version, Terra Nova partially restored, with new bodies of water and vegetation spreading from central points across the wasteland. It's a planetary restoration project, Tezik breathed, awestruck. Not just weather control. They were planning to reverse the drought entirely. And it's still operational, Kree added, examining readouts. The system has been running in standby mode for 8 years, maintaining the core technology and waiting for authorization to proceed. Authorization that only a Crane can provide, Nayland said, looking at Lyra. The weight of the discovery settled on Lyra's shoulders. This was far more significant than the weather control technology they had come seeking. This was the potential salvation of an entire world, a world that had become her home. Through her Dragonstone, she felt Kalorn's presence growing stronger. He had risked the Imperial defenses to reach her. The worms have retreated, he informed her mentally. But Imperial ships are approaching from the east. Whatever you found, we must leave soon. We've found hope, Lyra replied. But I need time to download the essential data. While Tezik and Kree worked to extract the critical information about Project Genesis, Nayland kept watch at the entrance. Lyra explored further into the facility, drawn to a section marked Personal Quarters. In a room that must have belonged to her parents, she found items they had been forced to leave behind. Research notes, holograms of happier times, and a small box with her name etched on its surface. Inside was a recorded message crystal and a pendant identical to her Dragonstone. With trembling fingers, Lyra activated the crystal. A holographic image of her mother appeared, the same face she remembered, but older and more careworn than in her childhood memories. Lyra, if you're seeing this, then something has gone terribly wrong, her mother's image said. The Emperor has discovered Project Genesis and fears what it represents. Cooperation between humans and scalers outside his control. We've been ordered to shut down, but the work is too important to abandon entirely. Her father's image joined her mother's. We've placed the system in standby mode and encoded it to your genetic signature as well as ours. If we can't return, we hope that someday you will. The Dragonstone in this box will connect you to Kalorn, an ancient ally who understands what's at stake. They knew Kalorn, Lyra whispered, stunned. They planned for him to find me. Not exactly. Her mother's image continued, as if anticipating her question. But we hoped. Kalorn has protected those who work toward Terra Nova's restoration for centuries. We believed if anyone could keep you safe until you were ready to continue our work, it would be him. The Oracle's prophecy about a bridge between worlds was never about humans and scalers in general, her father added. It was about you specifically, Lyra, a child of both worlds, with the knowledge and perspective to heal the divisions that have kept Terra Nova broken for so long. The message ended with her parents' promise to find a way back to her, no matter how long it took. Lyra sat in silence, the second dragonstone clutched in her hand, trying to process the revelation that her abandonment in the Wasteland had been part of a desperate plan, not a tragic accident. Lyra, Nayland called urgently from the corridor. Imperial ships are landing outside. We need to leave now. Gathering her parents' message crystal and the second dragonstone, Lyra rejoined her companions. Tezik had downloaded the essential Project Genesis data onto portable drives, while Kree had found an alternative exit through maintenance tunnels. Kalorn is waiting at the tunnel exit, Lyra informed them, feeling the dragon's presence through her connection. He'll cover our escape. They made their way through the narrow tunnels as the sounds of Imperial forces breaching the main entrance echoed behind them. Emerging into the harsh wasteland sunlight, they found Kalorn waiting, his massive form providing momentary shelter from aerial detection. The situation has escalated beyond our planning, the dragon informed them, his mental voice tense. Imperial communications report that the unknown ships have entered the inner system. They will reach Terra Nova within days, not months, as we believed. We need to reach the Imperial city immediately, Lyra decided. With what we've discovered, I might be able to convince the Emperor to prepare for contact rather than conflict. A bold strategy, Kalorn observed. Are you certain you're ready to face Emperor Draken? Lyra touched both dragonstones, the one she had worn for years and the one her parents had left for her. I was born ready, she said with newfound confidence. I just didn't know it until now. The journey to the Imperial city was fraught with danger. Imperial forces seemed to be everywhere, the military on high alert as news of the approaching ships spread across Terra Nova. Governor Sarek provided them with diplomatic credentials and an escort, but even his authority was questioned multiple times at checkpoints. Finally, after a tense journey through increasingly populated territories, they reached the sprawling metropolis that served as the seat of Imperial power. The city was a stark contrast to the Wasteland, towering structures of metal and stone, lush hydroponic gardens, and streets filled with scalers going about their business despite the looming crisis. At the central plaza, a massive public view screen displayed what had everyone's attention, images from orbital telescopes showing a fleet of ships approaching Terra Nova. Ships of unmistakably human design, but larger and more advanced than those that had brought the original colonists. The Emperor has ordered full military mobilization, Sarek informed them after consulting with his contacts in the Imperial administration. He's preparing to repel what he perceives as an invasion. Then we have no time to waste on protocol, Lyra said. We need to get into the Imperial Palace now. Kalorn, who had remained hidden in the wasteland outside the city limits, provided unexpected assistance. Through the Dragonstones, he communicated directly with a member of the Imperial Council, an elderly scaler who, Lyra learned, had been one of the original supporters of Project Genesis before the Emperor shut it down. Within hours, Lyra found herself standing before the massive doors of the Imperial Audience Chamber, the data drives containing Project Genesis clutched in her hands, her friends and Governor Sarek at her side. Remember, Sarek advised quietly, the Emperor is proud but not unreasonable. Appeal to his desire to be remembered as Terra Nova's savior, not its destroyer. The doors swung open, revealing a vast chamber dominated by a crystalline throne. Upon it sat Emperor Draken, his scales a deep crimson and gold, his eyes sharp with intelligence and suspicion. Around him stood members of the Imperial Council, military commanders, and scientific advisors, all engaged in heated debate about the approaching ships. Conversation ceased as Lyra and her companions entered. The Emperor's gaze fixed on her immediately, his pupils narrowing to slits. A human, he hissed, rising from his throne. In my palace. Explain yourself, Governor Sarek, before I have you all executed for treason. Sarek bowed deeply. Imperial Majesty, I present to you Lyra Crane, daughter of the chief scientists of Project Genesis, and the subject of the Oracle's prophecy. She brings knowledge that may save Terra Nova from both the drought and potential conflict with the returning humans. The Oracle's prophecy is subject to interpretation, the Emperor replied coldly. and Project Genesis was shut down by my direct order. With respect, Your Majesty, Lyra said, stepping forward. Shutting down the project was a mistake. My parents and their scalar colleagues had developed technology that could begin healing Terra Nova, technology that still exists and is operational. She held up the data drives. Everything you need to know is here. Project Genesis can be reactivated within days. It represents hope for Terra Nova, not just survival, but restoration. And what of these ships? The Emperor demanded, gesturing to the view screens showing the approaching fleet. Am I to believe their arrival at this precise moment is coincidence? Not coincidence, Lyra acknowledged. But perhaps not the threat you imagine either. Those ships likely carry more humans who wish to help Terra Nova, not conquer it. My parents may even be among them. So you admit they come for conquest, the Emperor declared. They come because Terra Nova was once meant to be a home for both our peoples, Lyra countered. Before fear and mistrust poisoned what could have been a partnership to save this world. The chamber fell silent. Lyra took a deep breath and played her final card. Your Majesty, I have lived on this world for 8 years, half my life. I have been protected by an ancient dragon, educated by your governor, and befriended by your people. I am as much a child of Terra Nova as of Earth. If I can bridge these worlds, so can others. She gestured to her scalar companions. These are my friends, as loyal to Terra Nova as any in this chamber. Together, we have rediscovered what your fear buried 8 years ago, the means to restore this planet to greatness. Will you now let that same fear destroy any chance of a peaceful future? The Emperor studied her with an unreadable expression. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed, a sound that startled everyone present. You speak boldly for someone whose life hangs by a thread, he said, but with less hostility than before. What guarantee do I have that these ships come in peace? No guarantee, Lyra admitted, but a choice. Prepare for war and ensure destruction, or prepare for cooperation and create the possibility of salvation. A commotion at the chamber entrance interrupted the tense exchange. Guards entered, escorting an elderly scalar in the robes of the Oracle. The prophecy unfolds as foretold, the Oracle announced, her voice carrying across the chamber. The bridge stands before us, forged in the Wasteland's fire, sheltered beneath the wing of ancient wisdom. Will you cross it, Emperor Draken, or will you burn it and watch your world wither into dust? The Emperor's scales shifted color slightly, a sign of deep thought among scalars. After what seemed an eternity, he descended from his throne and approached Lyra. You are either the most audacious spy ever to infiltrate my empire, he said quietly, or exactly what the Oracle claims. Either way, I find myself curious to see which path leads to Terra Nova's salvation. He turned to his council. Prepare to receive a diplomatic delegation from the human ships, and assemble the Project Genesis scientists immediately. I wish to review this technology personally. To Lyra, he added, you will remain as my advisor during these negotiations. If your words prove false, your life is forfeit. If they prove true, he left the sentence unfinished, returning to his throne. As the council erupted into activity, Lyra exchanged glances with her friends. Through her dragonstone, she felt Kalorn's approval and support. You've done well, little one, the dragon's mental voice assured her. The first steps across the bridge have been taken. 3 days later, Lyra stood on the Imperial landing platform, watching as a shuttle from the human fleet descended through Terra Nova's atmosphere. Project Genesis had been reactivated under the Emperor's wary supervision, with the first restoration modules already deployed in the Wasteland. Beside her stood Emperor Draken, Governor Sarek, and representatives from across Terra Nova. Behind them, visible on the horizon, was Kalorn's massive form, the dragon having been granted rare permission to enter the Imperial City as a gesture of the changing times. As the shuttle touched down and its doors began to open, Lyra felt both dragonstones pulse warmly against her skin. Whatever came next, she was ready. The abandoned girl from the Wasteland had found her purpose, not just to survive, but to help 2 worlds heal together. From the shuttle emerged a delegation of humans in formal attire. At their head walked 2 figures that made Lyra's heart stop. Older, changed by time and hardship, but unmistakable. Mom? Dad? She whispered, scarcely daring to believe. As recognition dawned on their faces, Lyra knew that the bridge between worlds had truly begun to form, and that sometimes being abandoned in a wasteland could lead to the most unexpected forms of salvation. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also, leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.